here has had the privilege to listen or hear Mr. John Alanis talk before? Awesome, awesome. So mostly a virgin crowd, I want to say this. At the first underground online seminar where I met Russell and Tellman, I saw him speak from stage and it blew me away. I immediately went home and started to apply the exact same topic. I'm more excited about what he's about to get into probably than you guys know, because this topic of email marketing, formulating an attractive character to speak to your audience from, it changed my business. And a lot of you guys that have learned things from me, really, you didn't learn it from me, you learned it from him, because the whole 2 email a day stuff came directly from him. He's one of the smartest marketers I've ever met, and I've given him tons of money, and he's helped my business a ton. I went back and I applied this presentation to my business. It doubled the next month and quadrupled the month after that. And yeah, he's a smart guy. So listen to him, he knows a lot, and he's going to talk about the attractive character and how it's going to help you market and make a ton more money. Thank
All
you,
right,
sir.
thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Dagan I consider to be a very bright individual, because not only after he heard my presentation did he give me money, he did what I said and gave me more money, which I liked. This is something that I encourage a lot.
Giving you money for it?
Yeah. Now, last time Dagan took me out to a great new cigar bar called Civil.
This is how I got him to come.
Yeah, and got me cigars and whiskey. So he found my sweet spot here, and I work for a lot cheaper for him now. So cigars and whiskey are now appreciated and will be mentioned in the presentation.
So throw him to the stage.
All right. What I'm going to talk about is something that I've been using in my business since the very inception. Ever since I started in business in May 23rd, 2004, and what I do, I'm in the dating relationships business. I teach men how to attract women. And even when I started back in 2004, there were already rumblings about the demise of email, even though it felt like it just started, distractions, and various other items that kept people from paying attention to your marketing. If there's any old school Gary Halbert people here, you remember that Gary always taught when it came to direct mail, the most important thing was getting your direct mail open and read. If they didn't open it, they couldn't read it. Okay? That was really in a different era, yet the problem today is still the same. If they don't get your message, or they don't pay attention to your message, they won't read it or watch it, and they won't buy anything from it. And so what I'm going to talk about in this presentation is the most effective way I know to get them not only reading your message, but looking forward to your message, tuning in your message, and anticipating your message so they can read it and give you money, which is what I presume we're all here for. So I've got the most overqualified slide operator in the world, Mr. Dagan Smith.
It's an honor, man. This is fun for me.
So if you wish to, we'll start with the first slide. So when I started in direct response circa 1996, I got in, it was the old JPDK, Jeff Paul Dan Kennedy model. These were the distractions that I was warned against by Dan and some of the other people that were there. Stationary phone and answering machine. If the phone went off, you were supposed to ignore it because it could interrupt you while you were working. The mail. The mail would arrive, stop work, run up and check the mail. Okay? Fax. Fax went off, went and checked the fax machine to see if there was an order there. It's a distraction. TV, and there was even this thing called a beeper that went off, and people went to a stationary phone and a phone call. This was in 1996. So if we'll advance the slide, we'll go to the distractions between 96 and when I gave the attractive character presentation at Yannick Silver's 2006 event, where Dagan was wisely in the audience and gave me money. We still have all the ones that I just mentioned: stationary phone, mail, fax, TV. Now we had emails. All right, you get an email, people check their email all the time, so you were warned about the distractions of checking email. All right, chat rooms, people went on and chatted with each other. That was a distraction. Cell phone. Anybody remember those things? the cell phone rang, instead of going to the stationary phone, now you would check your cell phone. So that was a distraction. Instant message. So they had ICQ, AOL Instant Message, all this stuff. So you could chat back and forth with each other from the computer. But even then, although there were certainly laptops, there was more desktops, you had to go sit somewhere and do that. And so now we got something that I called a preview of coming distractions, to be a little pithy. So does anybody remember Web 2.0? Web 2.0. High-speed video on demand. YouTube was coming up, MySpace, Friendster, blogs, but these were all harbingers of what was about to come, which is about the greatest age of distraction we've ever gotten into. So if you look at the distractions today, stationary phone, mail, fax, TV, email, chat room, cell phone, instant message from every damn webmail platform they have, YouTube, where you can go watch honey badger videos, whatever the hell you want, free porn videos on demand of any search that you tune in, you're going to get. Facebook, Twitter, text, Skype, smartphone, and now they have smartphone and iPads where you can access all of this stuff on demand from anywhere you are, even on a damn airplane, all right? I see people in the gym texting. Drop a weight on that damn thing. But the point that I want to make to you is, in this day and age where we are now, the distractions have multiplied. They have increased exponentially. But it still brings up the problem more than ever. If you don't get your message read, you don't get a sale. And not only that, it's not just opened, you have to get them to read or pay attention to the whole thing without being distracted by any of those things I just mentioned. In 1996, we yearn for those good old days when all the distractions was a phone call. Now, you got a smartphone, iPad, instant message chat, porn on demand, anything you want. People can go look at that stuff. If you're riding a city bus, which you ain't going to get me on, you're going to see a bunch of people doing this stuff, and statistically, 2 or 3 of them are watching porn on the bus. All right? This is a distraction. All right? So, we'll do the next slide. The average attention span of people in the mid-'80s, as according to Sally Hogshead, was about 20 minutes. You could pay attention. The average attention span of people today is 9 seconds. What Sally Hogshead calls the attention span of a goldfish. So this is the environment that you're selling in. 9 seconds, all right? There's other things that go along with that. These distractions that I told you are not just distractions, they're interruptions, all right? You get a text, your phone beeps and buzzes and jumps up and down, you gotta go see what it is. I had to figure out how to turn the damn thing off. You know, you get all kinds of different ringtones. If you get on Facebook, you get an instant message that pops up. If you go on a dating site, you might get a message from a hot girl. It's all these distractions and interruptions. And so when you have all these effects of interruptions, the human mind gets slower, duller. There's an inability to focus, an inability to pay attention for extended periods of time, as if 20 minutes was an extended period of time, and a lowering of IQ. Try this for a little bit. Go sit down next time you're doing an instant message or text chat. See how you feel before and see how you feel after. You don't feel as sharp. Now, go pick up a good book, read it for an hour, and see how you feel after you focus for an hour. You will see you feel smarter after you've done deep reading in a real book you hold in your hand instead of texting and Facebooking and Twittering and all that stuff back and forth. You can see you feel smarter. But all your customers, they ain't reading books. They're doing all this other stuff. So there is a somewhat of a lowering of IQ. On the next slide. Now, let's talk about even more stuff that has happened. Skepticism and prospect in the 1990s when times were good. Anybody remember irrational exuberance? Alan Greenspan's term. There was the internet stock bubble. I used to have friends in the 90s that they just talked about, man, just one more double on Dell stock. That's all I need. One more double. Really? People get 1% nowadays. They're happy. You could sell expensive customers to products via the JPDK method, and you didn't have to sell quite as hard because the national mood was good. So If we move on to 2006, when I first gave this presentation, product launches were selling $2,000 products. That was the norm. Okay? Credit cards were easy to get. People had one, you wanted to buy something, you get another credit card because offers showed up during the day at the mailbox. And you could always refinance your house for cash, because we all know real estate always goes up. We all know that. So people were more trusting and they wanted to buy. And in order for the ability to buy, just get another credit card, go refinance your house again, because real estate always goes up. So today, in the middle of a recession, fear of job, income, investment loss, access to credit has been severely restricted. Them credit card officers used to show up to people, they don't show up so much anymore. People hoard money and are afraid to buy. And this is a real important thing, number 3, is they are still stung by the real estate crash and the stock market crash despite rebound of the market. This whole real estate always goes up. People generationally were born and exposed to this. It was suddenly shattered in 2007, 2008. And so if you can't trust real estate, what can you trust? All right? You have deep economic fears, and really trust is at an all-time low. Okay? Many people are afraid of being scammed or lied to. You had the Madoff, WorldCom, Tyco fiascos, which, by the way, some of that stuff when it happens when times are good, because it happens throughout history. The Teapot Dome scandal in the 1920s. But when it happens when times are good, people are like, yeah, you know, it was a bad thing. People got ripped off, but I'm okay. When it happens when times are bad, it sticks with people, and it presents them with a fear of being scammed. Okay. By the way, if you don't watch American Greed, it's a little distractions and interruptions I was talking about there. I hope that ain't the porn notification. New porn. Go outside for that.
That show's great. I love American Greed.
Yeah. So one of the shows, there's a great show that's on. I watch it. Dagan watches it. It's called American Greed, narrated by Stacy Keach, former cocaine addict Stacy Keach, by the way. He's finally found his niche. It's a great show, because it talks about all the con men and how the cons develop and everything. And there's a lot to learn from that, and especially how these cons collapse. But people are exposed to all of this in this environment. So this is the environment we're faced with selling in. So trust, credibility, believability are at an all-time low. You can't trust real estate. Sure as hell can't trust corporate execs. Political leaders, you can't trust the government, IRS, NSA, EPA, whatever other alphabet agency. You can't trust investment advisors like Bernie Madoff, and you sure as hell can't trust internet marketers who won't even come out from behind their damn screen. All right? Trust is at an all-time low. People still have money, actually, but they're much more skeptical about spending it because they don't want to be embarrassed or feel stupid or feel like a failure by getting scammed or losing money, etc. Because people are more image conscious than ever, particularly this millennial crowd. They are so worried about what other people think about them. If you look at the rise of social media, it's provided a venue for people to build up images about themselves, to present something to other people that make them look like the way they wish they were. All right? Nobody ever puts up on Facebook, I'm a liar, I'm stupid, I don't deserve to live. You know, they put up things that are inspirational and make them feel good about how great they are. All right? People are more image conscious than ever. Self-esteem, when you talk with people, I tell a lot of my customers, a lot of people's self-esteem is in the tank more so than ever. Fragile egos, especially girly men, which I know you women have never dealt with, are everywhere. All right? So this is the environment selling. There's an entitlement mentality that's seeped into the national consciousness. In my apartment complex I live in, there's the two counter people, the counter guys, 21, 22 years old. You can't get these guys to work if you beat them with a rubber hose. I mean, really, they feel mad when you come in there and interrupt them from twittering and actually ask them to do something they're being paid to do. All right? They think it should just show up. So the point I want to make is distractions, interruptions, skepticism, laziness, and entitlement are at an all-time high. How do you sell in this environment? by captivating, mesmerizing, and fascinating. And you might want to write that down. We'll have some handouts for you, but captivate, mesmerize, and fascinate. All right, so think about this. By the way, I asked this question back in 2006 when I gave this. The fact that these two guys are still going is a testament to what we're going to talk about. So, what do Howard Stern and Rush Limbaugh, two radio personalities that have steadily held an audience through the development of all these new interruptions, okay? They've been there before 1996, back when stationary phones were a big interruption, okay? Through the development of all these new interruptions from before 1996 to today have in common still. Here's another rider downer, to quote Mr. Bill Glazer, an audience that actively tunes in every day to hear them. So think about that. Howard Stern comes on, the audience tunes in to hear Howard Stern. Rush Limbaugh comes on, the audience tunes in to hear Limbaugh like they have for the past 20 or so years. He ain't showing up in their inbox and saying, please go click on my link and listen to me. It's, oh, it's time to listen to Rush. So they tune in, they turn on, and they listen, like they have for the past 20 some odd years. He's captivated, mesmerized, and fascinated them. So, I'm a big fan of these HBO shows. I can't go to the movies anymore because some of these shows like Game of Thrones and Sopranos and Showtime's Californication are fantastic. And so think about it. What do shows like Game of Thrones, Sopranos, and Californication, seasons 1 through 4, have in common? Now, I will say about Californication, season 5 is okay. Season 6 is only worth watching to see how you can make a mockery of such a great show and destroy such an attractive character in only one season. All right? But if you watch seasons 1 through 4, it is absolutely fascinating. All these shows are captivating, mesmerizing, and fascinating. They compel the viewer, I want you to think about this, to not only tune in every week, but to re-watch each episode multiple times, talk about it amongst their friends, and tell other people to watch it. In Game of Thrones, I watched each damn episode 3 times, and then I'll go back and watch the whole damn season. And I get something every time. I'm actively tuning into it, and when I watch that show, there's no texting or iPadding or YouTubing or any of that stuff. Watching the show because I'm so captivated and fascinated by it. All right? And I've told a lot of people to watch that show too. So think about the analogy with marketing. The reason people do this with these shows is because they're captivating, mesmerizing, and fascinating, and they do what is rare in this age of constant distraction. They focus and hold the attention of the audience for a full hour to 30 minutes to an hour. All right? Think about that. People are sitting there watching these things. They're not texting. They're not talking on the phone. They're not on the computer.
She's twittering about it the whole time.
Oh, she's telling the people to watch it, isn't she?
Yeah. She's like, oh, did you just see that?
Exactly.
She's in.
It's a show that holds the attention. All right? And when she's on Twitter, she's not talking about like other things.
No.
She's talking about the show.
The show.
The
Absolutely.
show. Very important. All right? So, what is it about these shows that causes people to give them a full hour of attention while other shows, like some of these moronic network shows, can barely hold an audience? Think about that. All of them feature attractive characters that live long after the show ends. Sopranos ended in 2007. You say Tony Soprano, people immediately know who that is today. James Gandolfini, rest in peace, but they still know who Tony Soprano is because he lives long after the show ends. So Tony Soprano, Hank Moody, Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones are all fascinating and mesmerizing characters. You feel like you know each of them personally, particularly Hank Moody. You know the details about them. They're all flawed, but they're all likable in a particular way. They can get under your skin, and they transcend the actors who play them. You could never have anyone but James Gandolfini play Tony Soprano, okay? That's how compelling that character was. They transcend the actors who play them. So, some characters are so attractive, they live on forever. Some are so bland, their accomplishments, and I emphasize the word accomplishment, are forgotten in history. So I got a few examples here. So, who is this? Does anybody know who this is? What'd you say? All right, hold that thought. No, that's not General Patton, but that's a good answer. That's General Alexander Patch. That's General Alexander Patch. Patch was a World War II general, very competent, fought in the Pacific, fought in Europe, a very competent man, but kind of a bland individual. So go on to the next one. Who's that?
General Patton. Just keep saying it.
General Patton. Yeah. So, if I ask you a question, what do you know about Alexander Patch? Everybody's like, huh? What? Who? Is that George Patton? Which, I don't know if Patch would like that or not. But what do you know about George Patton? Anybody? What's that? He slapped a soldier. Yes, he did. Anything else?
He lost his command,
Sicily.
got his command back. The Third Army.
Third Army, yes.
Back.
Yes.
Tried, came this close to trying to start World War III on the eve of ending World War II. I mean, everybody's seen the movie with George C. Scott.
George C. Scott, yeah. Everybody, that's another thing. Everybody's seen the movie with George C. Scott. What do you remember about the movie with George C. Scott? There's Patton in front of an American flag wearing his ivory-handled holsters with the polished hat, just like that, with that particular look on. Now, I don't know anything about George C. Scott's presentation because my grandfather was a battalion commander in the 4th Armored Division, which was Patton's most aggressive division. He knew George Patton personally. So the only thing of the George C. Scott presentation that's flawed is that George C. Scott has this big, booming voice. Patton actually had a high-pitched, squeaky voice. Men, we are going to attack the enemy. And he detested it. But the speech that he gives at the beginning of that movie is a very accurate speech. Now, one of the funny things was about the ivory-handled pistols was some people would say they were pearl-handled pistols. Well, Patton had an answer for that. He said only a St. Louis pimp would wear pearl-handled pistols. Patton was very colorful. But you know things about him. You still remember things about him. I said, Alexander Patton, I don't know anything about him. All right, so let's go on to the next one. Peed in the Rhine, colorful language. Even if you don't know the specifics, you know the name. I mentioned Patton, everybody knows the name. Alexander Patton, nothing. So let's go on to the next individual. Who's this? Anybody know who this is? No one knows who this is. That's Admiral, it's not Marshall Falk. That's Admiral Chester Nimitz, who was in command of the Navy forces in the Pacific, very competent general, admiral from Fredericksburg, Texas, went on to 5-star rank. Very, very competent admiral, okay? But I mentioned the name, nobody knows anything about him. So let's go on to the next one. Who's this? Douglas MacArthur. By the way, 5-star general, command of all Army forces. Him and Nimitz were contemporaries. What do you know about Douglas MacArthur? Smokes corncob pipes. Yeah. So people still know things. Crushed hat, corncob pipe, I shall return. There's a lot of things people still know about Douglas MacArthur. All right, let me advance to the next one. Old soldiers never die. I shall return, just fade away. But you know something, and even if you don't know the specifics, when I say you hear the name Douglas MacArthur, everybody's, oh, I know who that is. All right? But they don't know anything about Chester Nimitz, who was a contemporary of his and held a 5-star rank as well. Why is this? Why do you remember the names Patton and MacArthur and not Nimitz and Patch, even though they were all contemporaries and all were high-ranking, accomplished officers? All right? Both Patton and MacArthur deliberately crafted their characters. MacArthur made sure his hat was crushed just right. He had an aide that went and crushed his damn hat for him. Had to be just right. Patton constantly gave his speech, wearing his ivory-handled pistols, and both men practiced their characters in front of the mirror for hours. That picture of Patton that I showed you is Patton with his war face on. A very deliberate facial expression that he crafted into his men. You may see rare pictures of Patton when he didn't have that. His normal demeanor was of a very humorous guy. So if you see pictures of him smiling or laughing, because he told a lot of jokes, had a very foul mouth, you're like, that's George Patton? He very deliberately crafted that look so people would remember it, and they both practiced their characters in front of the mirror for hours, okay? Both were highly ambitious, very ambitious, and recognized that memorable self-promotion was the only way to achieve that ambition. Patton was by far the most competent fighting general the U.S. Army had to offer, saved many American lives. His self-promotion and character creation helped mask his abrasive side, which made him more palatable for command. But it also made him more memorable 67 years after his death. He died in 1946. 67 years after his death. Both generals are long dead, yet are still recognizable to many Americans, whereas many equally competent Second World War generals, such as Walter Kruger, Vinegar Stilwell, J. Lawton Collins, are known only to students of that war. But those two stick out. Patton and MacArthur both worked diligently to craft the character they knew people wanted to receive. That they are remembered today is a testament to the success of the attractive character they deliberately created that everyone in this audience at least knew a little bit about. Right? Good news is this. You don't have to be a Patton, you don't have to be MacArthur, or Hank Moody, or Tony Soprano, or Tyrion Lannister to be the attractive character to your audience. You just have to be more attractive than most of the nonsense they receive, and that is a huge opportunity. So how is most marketing presented to prospects today? All right? Professional image, it's flat, it's boring, it's smarmy, devoid of personal details, academic, lame attempts at humor. People still have to send out the email with the subject line, sex. Oh, now that I got your attention, let me tell you about window washing. Really? Really? Oh, you're such a funny guy. You know, it's patronizing. It's lazy, it's phony, irrelevant, lazy, condescending, and so on. So that's what most of your prospects are getting, distractions. So most marketing business communication in this day and age is crafted so that it causes you to tune out. The opposite of Howard Stern and Rush Limbaugh and the HBO shows, which cause you to tune in. Okay? No character, no personality, there's nothing attractive. You combine that with fractured media, constant interruptions, the inability of the prospect to focus because they're YouTubing and porn watching, and it's no wonder why most marketing is ignored and the company eventually goes out of business. So, this is a huge opportunity for those who learn how to properly use and deploy the attractive character. People are dying to bond with characters, but so few are presented to them. So before getting into that, I'm going to move over here. Let's talk about media, because this is very important. Very important. The right media is of paramount importance to the use of the attractive character. And I'll tell you what I mean by the right media. Direct response marketing is ultimately the search for repeating patterns of human behavior. For example, if you go on the internet, what do we got? Searchers, lookers, social media addicts, instant messengers, chatters, whiners. You got any of them, Dagan?
I don't see them anymore, so.
You got rid of them. Commentators, flamers, likers, and so on. A lot of porn watchers going on there. So that's a lot of behaviors going on the internet. But you don't care for these. What you want are buyers. A list of 50 buyers is worth way more than a list of 1 million lookers. So who you get the attractive character in front of them is just as important as the character itself. Now, what do I mean by buyer? A buyer is someone who, when they get your message, they know what to do. They open it, read it, get out their credit card, and they give you money. All right? That's an ingrained pattern of behavior. And so when you go to the direct mail industry, you go to the list rental business, you can rent lists of recent mail order buyers. The pattern of behavior they all have is that they recently got out their credit card or sent in a check and they bought something. All right? They weren't whining, they weren't refunding, they weren't looking, they weren't tire kicking, they were buying. And so if you want to get the most out of the attractive character, who you get it in front of is just as important as the attractive character itself. And so if you get it in front of 1 million lookers who haven't bought a damn thing in their lives, but they've watched a lot of stuff, and they've liked a lot of stuff, and they've commented on a lot of stuff, you don't make any money. But you get it in front of 50 good buyers, you can make some money. So before I get into the mechanics of the attractive character, I want to talk a little bit about this media of buyers. All right, you're in business for one reason only, and that's the getting and keeping of money. You do that by building a house list meaning a list of customers you own and control, responsive buyers who like you and give you money when you ask them. So let's see if this works.
It worked.
Did it work?
I work.
Oh, it's perfect. I'll just point it at Dagan and you push your button. All right. So you have to understand, when I'm talking about media, this is front-end media, meaning that the media you use to acquire customers. So you want to acquire these customers from sources of buyers, then you build a relationship with them with the attractive character so they continue to buy. The best way to build that relationship is via attractive character. That's what keeps them coming back for years and years and years. Perfect. All right, and so while we're going to talk mostly about crafting the attractive character in this presentation, I want to touch briefly on the hierarchy of media to acquire customers, because if you waste your time on a particular form of media, say called Twitter, trying to get customers that give you money, you're going to be sorely disappointed. You'll have little to show for it no matter how well you present the attractive character. All right?
Again?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. See, you have an intelligent clicker. That's good. Listen, now keep in mind, I'll give a caveat to this before I get into this hierarchy. All media is worth testing for your business. I've tested almost every media except television, even Twitter. 3 months, got lots of likes, retweets, positive feedback. People thought I was really funny. I made $29.97. Tracked it to the penny. I ain't been on Twitter in 4 years. All right? But some media may be too costly for you, but the thing to always keep in mind about the media is this. You bank money, you don't bank likes or retweets or comments. So you want to play in media that brings you buyers. And I'm going to say, the reason I emphasize the word you is because there's different media that produce different buyers for different marketers. So, for example, for me, YouTube is a lousy, lousy media. Because for media to work, for YouTube to work, people have to pass it around. Well, in my industry where I teach men how to attract women, a guy has to admit he's lousy with women in order to pass something around. Guys don't want to admit that. Every guy's a stud with women chasing him all over the place, and he ain't going to admit anything else except to the women he's trying to attract. So YouTube for me is lousy media. However, it's a great venue for people selling fitness. Daniel Rose and Mike Chang of Six Pack Secrets, I think his name, they've done phenomenally well on YouTube. And the reason is because fitness is an industry that lends itself to sharing. Hey, did you see how to do those curls, you know, with your arm up like this and down like that? You'll put on 3 ounces of muscle if you do it while standing on 1 foot. You know, people want to see that stuff. And so it's a community association. And so the point of view that I want to make is the attractive character works very well in both of our businesses. But that's not, YouTube is not an appropriate media for me. It's a very appropriate media for them. So when I give this hierarchy of media, the caveat is you got to test it and see if it produces buyers for you. Where people get confused about this is the term buyers. I got 100 retweets. I got 50 likes. Well, how much money did you get? Huh? Well, the social media, I don't care about that. Money. Did they buy something from you? All right? So we got to keep that in mind. So this list is more of a rule of thumb than a hard and fast rule, but your decision-making criteria, does it produce buyers for you or not, so you can get your attractive character in front of buyers, all right? So here's a hierarchy of media quality. It's a rough rule of thumb. Platform sold customers, seminar attendees are the best, direct mail, magazine ads. Amazon, by the way, is something that should be paid attention to, because I'm doing a lot of stuff on Amazon Kindle right now. That is the one online marketplace that is aggregated millions and millions and millions of buyers. And so if you use Amazon as a venue to get new customers, you are getting your message in front of buyers. I'm doing a lot of stuff on Kindle, and I can tell you for an absolute fact that one opt-in email from a Kindle buyer who bought my book, opened it, read part of it, opted in because they liked what I had to say, is probably worth 15 Google pay-per-click opt-ins, all right? At least. Very important to keep in mind. So after Amazon, affiliate email blast to house lists, banner buys on websites frequented by buyers. I did very well on Newsmax for a number of years. A lot of direct response banners on that. TV is very expensive, radio to phone room. If you want to know how to lose a lot of money in radio, I can tell you. Turn $45,000 into 5 in 3 days' time. Not for the faint of heart. paid email blasts, relevant lists, Facebook ads, YouTube, pay-per-view, Twitter, and I don't know what else exists besides that. But that's a loose hierarchy of media, and really the reason I put that out is you can take all this attractive character stuff and you can put it in front of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of non-buyers and you won't make a damn dime, all right? But if you put it in front of the right people, the people who know that when they get a sales pitch, they open their wallet and give you money, you can do very well. So that's the caveat to this. So keep in mind the behavior of a customer is based on the source. So what is a prospect or customer acquired from Facebook doing all day long? They're distracted by Facebook. YouTube, they're watching honey badger videos. From porn, I'll leave that up to you. So think about a customer acquired from a list of recent direct mail buyers. What are they doing? Reading and buying. Write that down. Magazines, Amazon. Reading and buying online. Affiliate email blast, reading and buying, sometimes watching and buying, but always keep in mind the ingrained behavior of the customer based on source. What do you want them doing when you communicate with them? Reading and buying, all right? Reading and buying. Very simple, yet very profound, all right? Reading and buying. The way you keep them reading is by reducing the friction of buying is via the attractive character. Never forget ingrained behavior of your audience. Which would you prefer on your house list? Facebookers and porn watchers or readers and buyers? I'll take the readers and buyers. You can have the bazillions of the other ones. I want them. Now, like Dagan's talked about a lot of this, people that you may get from, say, direct mail or Amazon and stuff, they may have secondary behavior of social media, which can be very useful. But if you've gotten them from media that are featuring buyers, their primary behavior is reading and buying. Certainly doesn't mean that you can't use the other media to hurry along and aid the sale. Using, like Dagan was talking about Facebook comments with, say, people that come from direct mail buyers, very powerful, because they're buyers. But if you're doing that with people that came from pay-per-view or something, yeah, you're probably not getting much traction out of it. So now that you understand the importance of collecting the right audience, let's talk about how to get them reading and buying. You can have the best list of the best readers and buyers in the world, but if you bore them or insult them, they will ignore you and they will go away. You must captivate, mesmerize, and fascinate them so they look forward to hearing from you and actively tune in to what it is you have to say. All right, remember, when Howard Stern or Rush Limbaugh fan turns on either of them, they're actively tuning on the radio at a particular time, making a commitment to listen to them. They're seeking out the personality, not the other way around. Think about that. Seeking out the personality, not the other way around. That's the behavior you want to engender. When they get a message from you, you want them, when they wake up in the morning, you want them to think about tuning in and actively listening to or reading your message. That's what they do with my list. So let's get into the elements of the attractive character. Then we'll talk about the mechanics of deploying that character to your list, which is the 2 emails a day, or which has actually become 3, 4, 18 emails a day. The more you ask them to buy, the more money they give you. That's a good point. All right, so let's get into the elements of the attractive character here. Element number 1 has a moral code. This is very important. All right, here's what I mean by moral code. It's a code of behavior the character believes in and follows no matter the circumstance. It's not necessarily moral in an absolute sense, like ethical versus unethical, but it is a code that is followed regardless of the situation or personal harm to the character. Hank Moody is the best example of this. If you watch Californication seasons 1 through 4, Hank Moody has a moral code. But he drinks too much, he smokes weed, he's lazy, and occasionally indulges in coke. Here's the 2 elements that make up his moral code. 1, he's always faithful to his girlfriend Karen when he's with her, which is not much of the time. And really the thing that the whole show is centered around is Hank Moody defends women no matter how badly they've mistreated or the personal cost to him, okay? That's the Hank Moody character. And so this adherence to a personal moral code is one of the foundational elements of the attractive character. Very, very, very important. Tony Soprano is an interesting exception. Here's what I mean. He purports to have a moral code, loyalty to the family, but he violates it whenever it suits him, which makes him both attractive and repulsive at the same time. But the fascination is still created by the moral code. Okay? It's not that he's devoid of one, he claims to have one, he violates it. That's what's fascinating to us. So my advice to you is to determine your own moral code and don't violate it. Live it like Moody does. He lives his code, and he misbehaves in other ways, but he always adheres to his moral code. So we'll talk about the mechanics in the mechanics section, but your moral code should permeate all your communications with your customers. All right, we'll talk about how to do that in a little bit. So elements of my moral code, and I've sat down over the years and written this out. This is one of the advancements that, I've gone through since these are elements of my moral code that permeate all my communications. Everything is your fault. Entitlement is a disease. Do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. Constant education is a must. Getting what you want out of life is a learnable skill. Health and fitness are the foundation of a successful life. Self-reliance, independence, substance over style and image. Competence in your craft is a must. Show-offing is for losers. It must be avoided at all costs. Craft your environment carefully. Embrace reality. Be a doer, not just another talker. I don't care what other people think about me, really. And work ethic, okay? All of those have gone into the moral code I've evolved over the years. Different from Moody's code, but it works very well to my audience. Zero defect, all right. What zero defect means, I went to school on a 4-year Naval ROTC scholarship, all right? At the University of Texas, I'm going to be a nuclear power submarine officer. And so zero defect was what we were taught about as part of the values. That means is if you're going to be an officer, you can't have anything to do with drugs, all right? Zero defect. If you were caught smoking pot, you pot positive, you're gone. You're gone. And so it was a value of zero defect. And so that's part of my personal moral code. I don't like dopers. I don't like weed smokers. Now, do I have a lot of them on my list? Yes. But for me personally, that's part of my moral code. And so that's what zero defect means. All right? People do what they want, but for me, zero defect. All right? So now, here's what makes this whole moral code thing attractive. Few people these days have a moral code. They go along to get along. They want to fit in with the crowd. They have an entitlement mentality. They're just plain cowards. I have a lot of friends in internet marketing that have great ideas, but they're too afraid to launch them. They're cowards. They won't do it. But people naturally gravitate towards those who have an identifiable moral code and live by it. All right? You want to be more Hank Moody in the absolute than Tony Soprano. Okay? Hank Moody attracted a lot of people to him by the moral code. Tony Soprano at the end had pretty much destroyed almost every relationship that he had because of that. So if you look at my moral code and Hank Moody's, there are conflicts, yet both of ours are equally attractive. And so the presence of a moral code is more important than that moral code actually is. And so for each and every one of you, you have to think about what your own moral code is to your list. It may be in direct contradiction to mine, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. You have to figure out what it is for you into your list. What is the moral code that you live by? All right? An important note. Now, this is important. You never seek to impose your own moral code on others. You encourage others to adopt their own. Well, indirectly, holding out your own is a model, giving them something to aspire to. All right? You can't lead without a moral code. Your subordinates will eventually abandon you. Someone with a moral code is predictable and orderly. Someone without a moral code is chaotic. One of the best movie villains of all time was Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker in one of the Batman movies. And what made him such a great villain, he was completely random and chaotic. You had no idea he had no moral code whatsoever, and that's what made him such a great villain. He might give somebody $100,000. He might shoot the next person in the head. He might give someone $100,000, then shoot him in the head. You had no idea, and that's what made him such a great villain, was the absolute lack of a moral code. Right? Very compelling. Element number 2, admission and sharing of personal flaws while avoiding the perception of asking for sympathy. All right? You want your prospects and customers to feel like you understand them, like you have empathy for them. Very important. I first learned about empathy in marketing from Jeff Paul, but they need to feel like they are understood by you.
You say the second one again? I'm sorry.
Admission and sharing of personal flaws while avoiding the appearance of asking for sympathy. So, okay. Now, you want them to feel like you've been in their shoes, but you've overcome all the adversity they're facing to get to where they want to be. So, they're here, you've been here, you're here, they want to get to there, all right? So something we'll talk about called the hero's journey, which I'm sure Dagan has mentioned, that will kind of show you how it goes along that path, all right? But they need to feel like at one point you've been in their shoes. Not that you are now, but at one point you were. Very important, all right? You don't want to be a regular guy, but you want to have been a regular guy who's transformed himself or herself into someone with superpowers while retaining the understanding of what it feels like to be Joe Schmo. All right? They want a hero. People feel alone. They believe no one else has ever faced what they've faced. Oh my God, I tried telemarketing and I got rejected. Nobody understands what it feels like to get rejected by someone on a phone. Really? But they feel that way. So they believe no one else has ever faced what they faced, and they want someone who understands them. They want to be understood and appreciated. Right? You accomplish this by admitting your past personal flaws, adversity, things you overcame, the things that led you to failure, particularly the attitudes, mindset, beliefs, education, lack of money, teachers that you had back then. All right? In fact, you want them to even believe you were worse off than they were. All right? Now, actually, it helps kind of if it was true, because when I started my marketing, I was worse off than a lot of people were. And when I started this women approach you and attracting businesses at one time, I was worse off than most of my customers were. It wasn't pretty, but now I'm getting paid for that past failure, so it's better now. So, covertly, I'll go back to the previous slide. Okay. You want to particularly, like I said, hit on attitudes, mindset, beliefs, education, lack of money, teachers, etc. Go to the next slide. Now, covertly, these are all reasons for not buying. And when they identify with you and see you, over time that you have overcome all these flaws they know they have and believe is keeping them from being successful, and they like you and they trust you, they will eventually overcome these objections in their own minds, even if it's to the fact of, if this idiot can do it, I can certainly do it too. That's why it's even better to start out at a place that's even worse than where they are, because then they got no excuse. So, in the mechanics part of this presentation, I'm going to talk about how I do that with a long multi-part, 65 parts. It's an email sequence that follows the hero's journey. This is a very, very, very effective device for introducing them to your attractive character. Now, one huge part of doing the admitting of personal flaws in the beginning, when you tell the story of your journey, is how you went from they are now to where you are now. Like I said, they don't want to believe that you're still a regular guy stuck in with all the problems, all right? They want to believe you're Superman all the way up here and your life is absolutely perfect and they can look up to you as a shining beacon of hope. That's what they want to believe, okay? So they need to believe that you were where they are now, but you've achieved where they want to go. Empathy comes from displaying you have walked in their shoes, which is why I tell a lot of old stories from my past, a lot of old failure stories, fear stories, bad things that happened to me and things that I overcame. So they feel like I have walked in their shoes, which to my customers' audience, I have. A lot of them buy from me because they say, oh my God, John, when I read your story in the beginning, I thought to myself, wow, finally somebody else who has been rejected by a woman. Jesus Christ. On to the next one. Element number 3, sharing of interesting personal details about your life. That's an interesting personal detail. So I'll give you some of the interesting details about my life that I shared back in 2006. When I did this at Yannick's event. I was into health and fitness, Dallas Cowboys football, good heavy metal from the 80s, hatred of that damn whiny alternative music from the 90s that just won't go away. Serious student of direct marketing. I worked in the oil fields of Alaska, suffered through an electrical engineering degree at the University of Texas where there were no women whatsoever. But it didn't matter because I didn't know what to do with them anyways. I was in the metal art business, spent some time in the United States Submarine Force. I was a nuke power selectee, would have been a submarine officer if not for a problem with my eyes. Interviewed with the Central Intelligence Agency. Have a very interesting story about a lie detector test, which I'll tell sometime to borrow something because it's very funny, but it's something that I've told a lot. So I had a lot of interesting stuff to share back in 2006. All of this is woven into my correspondence and interaction with my customers. So me today, the evolution of me, because here's something very interesting. When people become fascinated by you and the character, they stick with you. Limbaugh and Stern, I've got customers that have listened to them for however long they've been around. I mean, with Howard Stern, I listened to him for a month. I'm like, I can't take another fart joke on Wednesday. I can't. So I tuned him out. But there's people that like that and have stayed with him for that long. So for me today, the evolution is, it's all the same stuff as above. Still hate whiny alternative music from the 90s. Still love Dallas Cowboys football. They got shot to do something if they don't have injuries. But I've added, I'm now a whiskey collector. Love good whiskey. Occasional cigar smoker, love a great cigar. Eater of big steaks. I've always been, but I've eaten some bigger ones. I've got a personal trainer now that I use and tell stories, but he's a 24-year-old kid. He's a nice guy, but he only listens to me about 70% of the time, so I tell a lot of stories about the advice I give him and what happens when he doesn't follow it, all right? Which is very funny. He listens most of the time. Occasional injury treatment. I'm 42 years old now, so going to the gym, I tend to get a lot of strains, bumps, bruises. You know, I'm a big fan of Sopranos, Californication, Game of Thrones. And I talk a lot about called deep reading. What I mean by deep reading is if you go read like an article on the Yahoo homepage or the Huffington Post or anything like that, the damn thing's 800 words long and it's like taking a bite of cotton candy. There's nothing there. But if you like pick up one of these Robert Greene books like Russell was showing and you sit down without distractions and you read it, you learn some really interesting stuff. And so that is deep reading, which I talk a lot about in my daily correspondence with people. And study of a guy named John Boyd, won't talk about that much here. If you want to learn like how to win at any conflict, go read John Boyd. He was an Air Force colonel who was pretty much a turd in the side of big government, but a lot of the innovations that came out because of Colonel Boyd. Highly recommend reading about Boyd. But we'll do that another time. But that was me today. Now, what I don't share is important as what I do share. You don't want to share everything. If you read the Robert Greene book, Art of Seduction, very, very good book, by the way. One of the things that creates a feeling of attraction, and this is about the attractive character, is vagueness. And so when you share specific details, they know you're a real person, but when you're vague on others, they become attracted to you because they start to wonder, wow, what else is this guy John up to? So I don't share personal relationship details, even though I'm in the Women Approach You business. I never share any of those. All right? I don't share specific business numbers. No bragging and making them up. I don't share things about personal friends and stuff like that. And so people read this stuff, they're like, this guy John's doing something, and then they start to wonder, well, what else is he going to do? He never talks about his relationships with women, but he talks about some from the past. I kind of wonder what he's up to. I mean, him and Hugh Hefner must be hanging out. Yeah. Yeah. The only thing he and I got in common is we're both working at night. That's the deal. All right? But what you don't share is really, really important because you want to create this vagueness. All right? Go on to the next one. So you want to strike balance between personal specifics and vagueness because this grows your legend in the minds of your prospects. They want a hero. Remember that. They want a hero. This is a way for them to give themselves a hero. All right. So your customers will pick out which details apply to them and bond with you over that. So in my list, this is really important because all these lists break down. I have pro football fans, one idiot Giants fan who won't leave me alone. I try to disabuse him of his incorrect notions, but he was a victim of the media and would not listen. So I have pro football fans, whiskey drinkers, HBO series fans, weightlifters, veterans, Navy and otherwise, cigar smokers, engineers, oil field trash, and deep readers. They feel like I understand them when I share these personal details of my life because nobody else in marketing has talked to them about what it's like to go 48 damn hours without sleep when you're driving a truck back from a job on a rig. But the oil field people, they know that. And they know, oh, this guy John ain't no bullshitter. He's the real deal because he's done it. All right? When I talk about smoking a Rocky Patel Decade Torpedo paired with a Pappy Van Winkle or something, all my whiskey drinkers and cigar smokers are like, oh, he's done it. He knows what he's talking about. All right? So they all bond with me. Different segments of the list feel like I understand them. All right? So there's a bonding effect that happens, which causes them to tune in. Choose your personal details carefully. This is something that you need to give deliberate thought about that. If you ever read the Book of Five Rings, which is like the Japanese equivalent of Art of War by Musashi Miyamoto, there's actually a really cool audiobook you get along, the CDs and stuff. He always stops after each lesson and he says, this should be considered carefully. Mm-hmm. This should be considered carefully. Choose your personal details wisely. Right? Element number 4, taking a position of authority with your list. Very important. People are not looking for a regular guy. They're looking for someone who was a regular guy and is now a special guy. They're not looking for a regular guy to follow. They're looking for someone to lead them, someone to advise them, someone who knows what they don't, someone with the big secret. You must take a position of authority. You have to do so with your list, and you have to declare yourself an expert like Robert Ringer lays out in the leapfrog theory. Anybody here read Winning Through Intimidation? Great book. If you haven't gotten it, you need to read it and reread it. Very quickly, what the leapfrog theory is this. There are 2 ways to get to the top in any profession. You climb the ladder, whatever that means, or you simply declare yourself at the top and you act from there. The caveat to that, which most people miss, is Ringer says when you are ready to be an expert. You don't show up and declare yourself an expert when you're ready to be an expert. So there's a lot of people that have declared, and I mean, they can barely get up in the morning, all right? They are exposed very quickly. So you declare yourself an expert at the top when you're ready. You do that instead of climbing it up and waiting for somebody to bless you and say that you are. But you have to make sure that you're ready. Right? But when I started my business, I took the leapfrog theory route and declared that I am the king of let them come to you, and I have a position of authority, and I can teach you this attraction stuff. Was I qualified at the time to do so? Yes, I was qualified at the time to do so. 5 years prior, was I? No. But I was at the time. So you have to be ready. So take a position of authority with your list. Understand this. People take comfort in authority and look to others to lead. And sadly, to think for them too. All right? Now, a moral code is very, very helpful in establishing and maintaining authority. Trying to establish authority and maintain it without a moral code is going to get you into a lot of trouble. There have been some internet marketers that have done such a thing, and they're no longer around because they declare themselves an expert. They were proven not to be an expert and not to be ready, all right? But people take comfort in authority. Your list, your customers are looking for someone to provide comfort to them, all right? So when you write, when you speak, You must do so with confidence, specific opinions about things, viewpoints on current events related to your business, but tell it like it is from an authoritative point of view. You must come across as an authority to your list. Because remember, they don't want a regular guy. They want someone who was a regular guy. All right? So it's called developing a presence with your list. There's something in the military called command presence. I'll tell you a story about that really quickly, which will really kind of demonstrate to this. When I was in 1989, showed up for the University of Texas Naval ROTC, the outgoing commanding officer was a Marine Corps colonel named Colonel Smith. Wasn't related to you, Dick. But Colonel Smith was an old guns and missiles Marine. I mean, he had a high and tight buzz cut, and he's a very colorful character, very approachable guy. And I actually sat down and talked with him for a little bit. And we got to talking about command presence. He says, you know you have command presence when you can go to a base where no one knows you, walk into a group shower, come out, and the men there say, good morning, sir. That's when you know you got command presence. No rank, no insignia, nothing. That's when you know. That's the type of presence you want to develop with your list. All right? No one follows someone who is unsure or someone who is a wimp. All right? Nobody. So, element number 5. You're unafraid to offend, and you tell it like it is. All right? This ties in with not being a wimp. People like strong opinions. They don't want weak. They don't want wimpy. They don't want waffling. They want strong opinions. Now, this ties in with the moral code. Express your opinions as an extension of your moral code. Now, stay on topic to your list, but don't be wishy-washy. When it comes to something that's violating your moral code, you can express a strong opinion on that and say why this is to the detriment of your list. All right? So, people don't now, when I say don't be afraid to offend, that does not mean deliberately try to offend. I can offend my whole list in a week and never have them come back to me ever by being deliberately offensive. And so you don't deliberately try to offend, but you don't be afraid to offend as a result of taking a position of advocacy on a particular behavior. You should never be afraid to offend. It's like Kennedy's been saying for years and years and years, if you haven't offended by somebody by 12 noon each day, you're probably not making any money, and it's true. People are offended by strong opinions, and they respond to strong opinions, all right? But you don't want to deliberately try to offend. All right, element number 6, use of colorful descriptive language. This is a really big one because this is what gets people tuning in to hear you, all right? This is absolutely critical. Dry, boring language will cause people to tune out. Colorful descriptive language causes people to make word pictures in their heads. And so, for example, there's a couple of sayings I always liked. You say, well, there's 2 sides to that pancake. Or, well, you just can't call up 1-800-TEXACO to get one of those. Who said all of that stuff? Advance it. Nobody's on that one. This man right here, Coach Bill Parcells. So when Bill Parcells was coaching the Dallas Cowboys, I would tune into every single press conference he had that was broadcast live because listening to him work over the media was hilarious. And so they'd ask him a stupid question and, like, well, what are you going to do about the quarterback position? And his response was, well, look, you just can't call 1-800-TEXACO and get one of those, okay? Really? And so they'd laugh in spite of themselves, which everybody just did. And it would stick in their minds, and so it would disarm them a little bit because it was funny, it was engaging. And so Parcells always has some kind of funny, homey statement in answer to it, and that's one of the things that's made him one of the most successful coaches in NFL history. When you have him, when he comes on, even on ESPN still, the other people on there are a little bit afraid of him because they know if they say something stupid, he's got a colorful saying that's going to zing them like that. Now, if you don't think he's practiced this stuff in front of the mirror for years and years and years, you're crazy, all right? Bill Parcells is a very cerebral individual. All right, and he understands the use of colorful language perfectly. So, like I said, both the above phrases were used by Coach Parcells to describe different situations to the pea-brain idiots in the media. Parcells, if you ever get a chance to watch him, you should really watch him, especially if it's a long presentation. He's a master of colorful language, and he always gets people to laugh in spite of themselves. And that's a big key to attraction. You know someone has experienced attraction when they laugh in spite of themselves. And what I mean by that is if you say something that's like, I don't know if you should laugh at that, but you do anyways, you can't help yourself. If you can get people to do that, they're experiencing attraction, all right? And colorful language is a great way to do that. So, now colorful language done correctly, it catches people off guard. It's different, it's unique, and people don't quite know what to make of you, especially when they don't use it themselves, okay? And you certainly don't see it much in marketing at all. But colorful characters who use colorful language are attractive characters. I use a substantial amount of it in my daily emails to my customers. And I've learned it over the years, as the time I spent in the military, in the oil field, the deliberate studying of it. By the way, I mentioned George Patton earlier. There's a great book called The Patton Mind. Patton actually sat down and wrote about a whole science of using profanity the right way. All right? And there is a right way to use it. It's a teaching tool because it produces word pictures in your head. Yeah. Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, his.
What are those examples?
What's that?
I want the examples of profanity in the right way.
All right, everybody want profanity in the right way?
Of course.
All right. One, that's an open loop, by the way. All right. Here's one. I'll close this one. Here's one story, and this was verified by. I actually went to a reunion in 1996 to the 4th Armored Division and met some of my grandfather's men, which was really cool, and all of them had known Patton. Because he was the only general that would come out to the front while the rest of them were in the back. And so what you have to understand is that when they were training American troops to go up against the German army, you were taking people who had no military experience whatsoever. 6 weeks later, 12 weeks later, they were going to fight the best army in the world, the German Wehrmacht at the time. And so they didn't have time to sit down. Every single second was precious. And so one of the things that you had to do, if you were in an armored infantry battalion or in an armored or a tank battalion, was you had to know how to put a tank into defilade. Does anybody know what that means? Any tankers in here? Nobody knows the damn tank into defilade. And so if you try and teach your men, go put this tank into defilade, they don't know what you're talking about. They get killed. So what Patton said, you put a tank into defilade by running it up against that berm and raising the cannon up like it's a stiff pecker. Now, I guarantee you, everybody knows how to put a tank into defilade now because you got that image in your mind. All right? Now, how many lives did that save when people had to put a tank into defilade? Go put that tank up against that berm with the cannon sticking up like a stiff pecker. All right?
That embarrassed using profanity in the correct manner. I don't know if you look like you're using it incorrectly, but yes, the image is very, very, very profound.
I never use profanity incorrectly. I've studied it pretty well. I've had some good teachers.